Hi, I'm IKEA, and for today's video, I want to have an in-depth look into visualizing stats. And yeah, we're gonna look at how we look at things. You see, it is very important for us to do that. As actually one of the things that we can do, instead of calculating things out, you can actually already derive a lot of information by just tallying off what brand bonuses and what stats you're gonna get on builds. This will actually be an easy way to avoid some of the more obvious mistakes that I see some people sometimes make, as it might feel smart to, for instance, as we'll look into in a few seconds, into maybe running a few pieces of a gear set for some of their bonuses. And generally, unless you really know what you're doing, you're going to be doing that wrong. As there are places where, for instance, three-piecing Hotshot or three-piecing Breaking Point makes some sense. Same for instance, two-piecing Cavalier in some ways for that status effect or the hazard protection that it has. But generally in crit chance, crit damage form, it doesn't. So yeah, let's go and actually kind of look at those factors as we'll go through some builds, and where normally you would kind of do this in your heads or just on paper. We'll actually take the stats from in the game, put them side by side kind of. But eventually this is a skill that I would kind of advise to instill in yourself. After a while, it is pretty easy to just go, okay, if I go this route, I gain this stat, this stat, this stat. If I go this route, I gain these stats. Take just what the differences are, because that's, of course, what we're going to look at today. Everything that is the same between them, that's the same. Just where they differ, we'll put them up against each other and see the bigger picture. So yeah, let's go have that in-depth look into looking at things. And yeah, let's first explain kind of what I mean when I say visualizing stats. As you know, we're not reaching out with our third eye and really, feeling the crit chance. No, it's literally visualizing stats. We're taking them and kind of just as they are and putting them up against each other. And the way to kind of do it as well is just basically as well tallying off against each other. So let's say here I'm running a glass thread, one of the classics, just picked as random as a subject for this. And yeah, this, of course, we could run it with a coyote or something as a different piece and stuff. But what some people think sometimes is a good idea is, and you may have seen this out in the wild, is to put two pieces of HeartBreaker here, because we have, of course, there an AR. We don't have an LMG, but we could have an LMG secondary. But we have an AR, and we could get bonuses for the AR. Now, of course, this usually as well, this wouldn't be in this. This would be maybe more in a Gen 2 style, where we have Cheska plus Fenris maybe already. But that's just to illustrate kind of the points. Would this be a good choice? And can we actually get to knowing if this is a good choice just by visualizing the stats, as we kind of talked about? And for that, I've already prepped a little bit of a drawing here, and I'll link the final version. We'll actually have all of the comparisons we'll do today kind of in here, and I'll make them a little smaller so they'll all fit. But then for the current one, we'll have it up here in a little bit bigger. We're gonna zoom in a little bit. We can already kind of tally them off against each other and visualize them. So we have taken the two pieces that have changed, because everything else, of course, is the same. Every other piece is exactly as it was. We could, in the same way, compare them, but they would be the exact same. But even here as well, we still have just the mask, and we have the holster of both of those pieces, going with HeartBreaker or going with the Grupo and the Providence there. We have the brand bonuses, the two-piece bonuses over there, and then for HeartBreaker, and then their stats here. So what actually are we even comparing then between these two? Because there is still quite a lot the same. So actually what I'm going to do here is, take away the parts that are the same. So yeah, we have that, we have this, that's the same. This two crit damages here is the same, but here we have an extra crit chance, right? So let's just crop to that. So yeah, here we have a crit chance and the brand bonus. Now the brand bonuses are, of course, going to compare on the two pieces here again as well. With our Grupo piece there, we can take away the two cores. The cores are the same, so it's going to be the same between them. And as well, actually, this crit damage gets to go away. And what we'll do here is actually do the same. And for instance, here, crop this out. Now, of course, generally this well, you don't need to go as intricate as I'm doing here. This is usually what I'm doing in my head when somebody asks, hey, would this be better than this? Would this be in some way better than that? And this is the mechanic that you use for that. So now we're left with just this. So we have a 15 assault rifle damage versus 12 crit chance and 26 crit damage. Now, as you already might guess, that's not a good trade at all. The number's already bigger, but 12 crit chance and 26 crit damage, you can kind of relate them as well in the way that brand bonuses then work. Normally on Grupo, for instance, as we have it here, we have 13 crit damage. On Fenris, we would have 10 weapon damage. So generally, they're in a ratio of about a 1.3 to 1, right? We have a lot more than 1.3 here. And from that, you can kind of derive, even without calculating, that in most settings, this would be a bad idea. Now, there could, of course, still be an argument to be made, because there are places where, for instance, using a few pieces of gear sets, even without using the 4-piece, because quite often we say, like, never use anything unless 4 pieces. That's also not true, because there are places where, for instance, Headshot especially. So for Hotshot, with having just needing 1 stat per item, basically, and that just being Headshot, because that's our damage component, usually we put weapon handling next to it. There you have a much better chance, but when it's crit chance, crit damage, it adds up pretty quick. Because here, yeah, we're taking up 12 crit chance, which already would be close to equivalent to this 15. And then we have another 26 crit damage on top of that. And that means that, yeah, 2-piecing Hardwire or a Heartbreaker as we have here is, you can just see from this already, is a bad choice. Just 26 crit damage by itself would likely be equivalent, or more so even, than the 15 assault rifle damage. And then we have another 12 crit chance on top. Now, of course, in some of things, it's less obvious. And as well, one of the things you could argue, of course, is, yeah, we could go, for instance, if we already had some of the brand bonuses already, and we would run out of these brand bonuses, then we could get ourselves into trouble, right? Except not really, because there's always an option. And let's go look at that versus Negotiator. And we come back to this, where we have made more horrible choices. And of course, I would hope most people that enjoy my content and kind of are a little bit deeper into it and are willing to learn will already kind of know 3-piecing Negotiator is a bad idea. Why not just go that 4-piece if you're in deep into it? But sometimes people do. Sometimes they give the explanation of, for instance, with a Bullet King nowadays, if you have a crit chance 3rd stat and then also have some crit chance here, you don't need that extra crit chance rolls here, even though they're kind of going for these pieces here, having the crit chance. But sometimes, and I've seen this out in the wild, and I would think most people at some point will have seen somebody 3-piecing Negotiator. Because it does give 15 crit chance, 20 crit damage. That sounds like a lot for the 2-piece and the 3-piece. But of course, actually, the 4-piece is where it gets good. If we take this up into this viewing again, if we actually look at these and kind of tally it off against what is, of course, always an option, because one of the things is you might run out of brand bonuses, right? That's sometimes the argument of like, oh, but there aren't any good brand bonuses remaining for me, because, for instance, if we kind of go back here, we're already at crit cap, actually, and yeah, we can't put a Cheska in here. We already have Petrov, we already have Grupo. What do I put in here? The actual answer, of course, would be you would have a Contractor's Glove and a Fox's Prayer, because their bonuses are pretty good. You could even put in a Pika Rose. Besides the point, let's say we can't think of any bonuses. They don't exist. We're in year 1, even though back then it was quite different, but let's not digress into that. What we can always do is use one of these pieces. Now, here I have one set up for protection from Elite for a PFE build, but we have improvised. So yeah, we can, if we were to put ourselves to that, we could have a red score, crit chance, crit damage, and then we could have a 12 crit damage mod. That can effectively be the brand bonus, and especially that's why I've picked these 3 slots that we have here. Those are all 3 slots we could put improvised pieces into. So if we go back, on the left side, we have 3 pieces of improvised gear. On the right side, we have 3 pieces of negotiator. Of course, the improvised actually are even 1 crit damage less than Gruppo. They are 1 crit or 2 crit chance less than, for instance, a Cheska. But of course, if we're kind of going in with the discussion of like, okay, we're already, you know, we don't need this stinking crit chance, even though you're kind of going towards it with that. But let's say that is the reasoning. Let's tally them off again against each other. This improvised against this negotiator. Let's actually do that. I'm gonna grab, of course, on this end, we're just gonna be left with, in this side, 1 crit chance. And that weapon damage and crit damage that we had, those can go to the side. They tally off against each other. So we can move this down. So we have a crit chance and a crit damage here already. And as you may see, that might be the pattern, of course, because what we get here again is we have a weapon damage and 1 crit damage. So let's tally those off against each other as well. That crit damage disappears. These 2 stats go away. Same here, of course, that weapon damage and that crit damage get to go to the side. They're the same. Here as well, we've tallied off this 1 crit damage, basically. So yeah, we're left here with 3 crit chances and 3 crit damages. Simple maths tells us that that is 18 crit chance, 3 times 6, and 36 crit damage. So we're taking up 18 crit chance, and we have 36 crit damage. And that is why we don't do 3 pieces or 2 pieces of negotiator. It is just not in our best interest to do so, because we can just get more numbers and the same basically numbers out of, for instance, even if we run out of brand bonuses out of these. Because keep in mind as well, if we still have a spot for a Gruppo or a Cheska or something, we can go with those. And of course, in the build that we had there with it being high-end pieces, the better choice would be, for instance, to, even if you wanted to keep the Bullet King, to go Rate of Fire there, losing yourself a little bit of crit chance. And then you could sneak in Contractors and a Fox's Prayer, for instance, for some increased damage. But even without those, even up against improvised pieces, 3-piece negotiator just fails outright. And that's why we don't use it that way. And hopefully illustrating it once more, that's a bad idea, but people still do it, and I still see it out in the wild. Let's actually now go with one that is a good idea. And yeah, to show as well, for sometimes that it is actually a good choice to go with 3 pieces of a gear set. Because generally we say, don't go unless you go in 4 pieces. The thing to say actually is, don't do that unless you know what you're doing. When you actually understand the rules, that's when it's okay to maybe break a few, because you know why you're breaking them, and and that it will work out in your favor. So one of the setups that we can go with, especially for marksmaning, is this, where we go 3 pieces of Hotshot, and then generally this would be done as well, maybe with the Habsburg pieces, with the 2-piece Habsburg, but here I have a Chainkiller Araldi, and together with that as well, a Fox's Prayer. Ignore that this is crit damage, this is just for quickness sake. We're not comparing actually onto those pieces, but instead of, for instance, this 3-piece of Hotshot on the mask, the glove, and the holster, could we go any other choice and extract more? Because in this lineup, especially where we aren't actually already using the Habsburg chest and backpack, one of the things we could do, of course, is go with the mask being Habsburg. And Habsburg, of course, has that headshot on the first piece, and we could go actually 2 pieces of it on the glove then as well, maybe, or any of the other pieces. The order of the pieces doesn't matter much, but we would have 20% marksman rifle damage there. And then we could, for instance, for argument's sake, this 3rd piece could be a Providence. We could, of course, as we talked about, always go with an improvised piece if we run out of brand bonuses. But in this case, of course, the improvised piece would have a 10 headshot mod, acting as kind of its brand bonus, so to say. The Providence would have 30, so that's just a straight up better choice. But then on the Hotshot being pretty powerful on its bonuses, we have actually 30% marksman rifle damage, 30% weapon handling, and 30% headshot. And this is, of course, kind of what makes this option a possibility. And that is because we're also going just for headshot, especially as our damage trait. When we're going crit chance, crit damage, losing out one of those two stats on a piece comes at a cost. Here, we're tallying off against weapon handling, in effect. And of course, we already saw that there is a sum there. So actually taking this over into this piece that I've prepared here, we'll zoom in a little bit, although that's maybe too far. That's the right size. We're taking here the brand bonuses of those three pieces on the right side of with Hotshot, and then basically what stats we're kind of getting out of them. And on the left we have the same, but then spread out a little bit more because of the brand bonuses. So we have 1 piece Habsburg, 2 piece Habsburg, and then 1 piece of Providence bonuses, and then together with their stats. Now let's tally them off against each other once more. And of course, all of these weapon damages, they just tally up against each other. They are the same for both. We don't need the rest there. So those can go to the side. Now, this being the mask slot, we have on the top one here, we have a headshot and then a headshot mod. So the same would be true as tallying off. We would just tally off against here. Just these two headshots go away, and this goes to the side. So we're left with just that weapon handling, and that's a big difference here, and that's what makes this a possibility. If we do the same here as well, and crop onto just having that weapon handling, and the headshot goes away, because we've tallied that one off. Here again, this headshot goes away, and we're gonna tally that off against the headshot on the left. Everything that is the same, and we don't care about it. So now we have the gear set bonuses of the 3-piece versus, in this case, so what we have, if we kind of link them up a little bit more easily, we have at the top, we have 13% headshot plus 13% headshot. And you might already see where this is kind of going. We have 13 and 13 on the headshots there. Now, of course, on the right side, we have, instead of 26 headshot, we have 30 headshot. On the left, we have 20% marksman rifle damage. On the right, we have 30% marksman rifle damage. On the left, we have 8% weapon handling rolls, getting up together to a 24. And that's going up against 30 weapon handling. Everything on the right is bigger for those 3 pieces. Now, of course, if we had some other options maybe to go with, and for instance, you could even give up that 3rd piece where you're getting some headshot damage for instance, contractors, where you're getting DTA, and that might be actually a bigger bonus, depending on how you're set up and what you're shooting at. But especially kind of in the obvious sense, actually in this case, the 3-piece Hotshot wins. And that's mainly down to, we just need 1 stat. We're focusing on headshot. We don't need 2 stats there. We're not even losing actually weapon handling here, because the weapon handling on the 3-piece is better. And that is why, that 3-piece Hotshot that we saw there a second ago, that actually wins against other choices that we would have. And we can come to that conclusion just by this. We tally off against each other, and 26 less than 30, 20 less than 30, and same here, 24 less than 30. So then, go with 3 pieces here, because you don't even, as I've seen some people wrongly say, they say like, oh, that second stat, you're using it for weapon handling, so you would lose out on that weapon handling. In the case of Hotshot, it's so powerful in the 2-piece and the 3-piece that it also even carries that weapon handling. Let's go actually look at our new friend Refactor and kind of how that stacks up against some other builds. And lastly, I want to look at Refactor actually here as a comparison point as well, as this one is one that I feel a lot of people are kind of hyperbolically saying that Refactor can't do the same damage as a high-end, which there's a kernel of truth there, but just a kernel. The rest surrounding around it is a little bit more complicated than that. For that, I've come to this character where we have a high-end turret drone, just in the classic setup, 2 pieces of Empress together with 1-piece Wyvern and 2-piece Hannah Yu. Of course, the way we kind of set up with Refactor is that we can actually go a somewhat similar route where we keep the backpack and chest and kind of similar talents basically. So the chest and the backpack, although on that one would generally be as we have it here, and this is a newer addition to the build collection 3.04 refactor setup in a drone setting, and also kind of shown there with on the side how to set it up for a mortar, because yeah, we can actually make some different choices where we can make the mortar and an explosive skills, although the Stinger actually not benefiting from from the explosives damage as a stat, but it is technically an explosive skill. It does bleed, it gives yellow damage, but it doesn't actually benefit from explosive damage. But yeah, we can have a setup for that, but we're kind of looking at the setup for high end. So in this one, though, we would want to have a Honey-U chest and Honey-U backpack. Then, of course, we have 2% more skill damage from going this route than we would from a Honey-U plus Wyvern. But what we could have is these two same pieces kind of in that same other build as we had in a second. And then basically it is the other 4 pieces, right? It is basically those 4 pieces of a refactor with 1 stat, and then the group set bonuses. And of course, the group set talent doesn't actually apply anything to damage. It is your damage gets converted into healing. If we were to tally that off against this build, basically, if we had the Honey-U in the same spot, it would be 1 piece of Wyvern, or well, at least the brand bonus is Wyvern, with these stats, and then 3 pieces of Empress. So, of course, as well, again, that is at the ready here. There. So take a second. And let's actually tally them off as we did in the last one. On the right, we have the pieces of with the gear set with Refactor. And on the left, we have the pieces if we were to go high-end. Of course, as well, here, actually, I'm kind of cheating a little bit. We would have Technician. One of these would be a Red Core maybe or something. But that doesn't matter. It would be the same for both, because we basically have the 4 pieces of gear set versus 4 pieces of gear. And here on the left, then we have that represented by these high ends. If we actually kind of go and then tally them off, as we kind of did, first of all, of course, all of these skill tiers, they don't need to be here. They're all here for everybody. And let's actually get those out of the way, because the cores kind of align with each other. Let's actually get them directly out of the way. So what we would have here is that on the left side, of course, on this mod slot, we could actually have a haste as well if we wanted to. But what we can definitely say is that these skill damages are tallying off against each other. Now, of course, one of them is set up more to just be fully dependent on the third-turn drone. The other one is set up kind of hybrid-ish, but that's also generally what I do with high-end third drones, is I go that route, which I much prefer, because you can actually extract a decent amount from the capacitor. That's also why it is set up as glass there, even though, yeah, you could go, kinetic momentum nowadays. But yeah, another skill damage there. This skill damage goes away. We have to take it away from this side then as well. So we're left, as you can see, kind of, with some other stats. Now, in this case, of course, this could also be weapon or skill haste in this case. Now, for instance, this skill haste could actually go up against this crit chance that we have there. This could be the same, crit chance if we wanted there. So let's actually even take away, for instance, here, the mod slot, which could be either of these. But what we have basically is 4 stats. Now, these could be haste as well if you wanted to. But in total, damage-wise, for the skills themselves, we have 8 skill damage there. So if we kind of put the crit damages together and the brand bonuses, I'll put the skill health actually above, because yeah, that one isn't damage, incidentally. And so yeah, on the left side, we have then the gear set. On the right side, we have the brand, or well, the thing remaining from the gear set, which is just those main bonuses basically. And then actually what we have on the left is skill damage wise, because the skill efficiency of course feeds into skill damage as well, and a lot of other things. But the skill damages themselves, 10 plus 8 plus 8, 26, 25. We're not, of course, in either of these kind of, there's no status effects going around, even though you can kind of set up Refactor to be status effect side. But this is 26 skill damage versus 25. This isn't the meaningful difference. This isn't, the high end will do much more damage on its skills. But there is, of course, as we talked about, a kernel of truth there, and that is, of course, that we can have other things. We have 10% skill health. We have also actually, well, we have 18% skill health because the skill efficiency feeds into haste. If you really wanted to as well, we have here basically 4 stats. That could be 40 skill haste. In this case, of course, we have 36 crit damage and 6 crit chance, or, well, we could have any combination of that, of course. It's just we have 4 more stats, basically, but we don't have that much more damage. And of course, as well, if we kind of feed that into, for instance, although you wouldn't run Mortar with just that high-end setup for more turret to drone, because if you're going with Mortar, you're making different choices. But for instance, if we are on that side, we do, for instance, gain a little bit from the status effect, from the bleed of there. But damage-wise, the high-end on the skills, at least, is not ahead at all, that much. It's 1 skill damage ahead, if we account for all the other things. It just gets a lot of auxiliary things because, yeah, that haste, we could have 48% haste here with 4 mods, and then even 8% more, of course, here with from the skill efficiency. Those things should not be discounted, but the skill damage is not the argument to make here. Because, yeah, there is definitely value on the left side, but then there's also value on the right side, because those skills are actually doing about the same damage, but then when they hit an enemy, they heal our allies. And that's kind of the thing here as well, especially on things, gear sets, where, as we have also discussed here mostly today, I haven't gone in, for instance, and compared, let's say, one of the damage talents on a backpack, let's say Negotiator's increase of the spread damage, because there's no one-to-one. And that is kind of the downside of this. This is only really usable if you have similar stats on both ends, and you can kind of compare them in that way. When we don't have that, when we don't have similar stats, it becomes a little bit more hard, because how much is 10 detox worth in crit damage? Now, when we actually take it to a DPS calculation, we can answer that. In this, it is a lot harder to answer. There are still methods, as you can calculate out how much that multiplier would add, as we kind of discussed in the simple calcs part of it. We could calculate out with the multipliers that we already have how much the gear set would add. But that isn't to say that this is, the end-all be-all, basically. But this definitely as well is not clowning around, and is definitely useful thing to kind of know about. And generally as well, whenever you see me answer a question pretty quickly, this is kind of what I'm doing in my head. And it's kind of a thing that is well worth letting it become kind of second nature. Now, of course, sometimes you get it wrong, and sometimes you forget about something, and then actually taking it to maybe some pen or paper, or as we did here with some tools to assist us, as we just snippet out the stats and took them over there and kind of compare them that way. Of course, you can also use things like the Build Station app, or even MSK SWAT, or even some of the build tools, as for instance provided by Scooby. All of those are, of course, you can put them side by side. They will even spit out the values for you. But this, just in your head to quickly compare, like, hey, if I get this, I get this. If I take these 2 pieces, I get this, which is worth more to me. That is an assessment that you can do kind of in your head, as we kind of showed here. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative in some ways. If you did, please do any and all of the algorithm things down below. It is always much appreciated. So did a little bit of shilling here. And I hope you join me for future videos, as we'll actually go into showing some macros and how I have some of my macros set up. And actually recently they got upgraded, but with the help of a person from the community, Dream, who kind of helped actually expand them and make them much more betterer, expanded and betterer. And yeah, I kind of want to show actually, for at least for us PC users, how to open up apparel caches so much faster and buy from vendors so much faster. As well, actually, we found an interesting thing there as well. So I hope you join me for those. And as always, have a good night.